We are small creators. We've been inspired by the works of Mahler, J.Xe, Critical Drinker, Fringy, E.R., Madvocate, and many others. People who have been pioneers in the critical discussion of fiction. From them, we've seen comprehensive analyses of some of the most popular franchises out there. Series like Star Wars, Marvel, DC, Doctor Who, Jurassic Park, and The Last of Us have been covered in extensive detail. As is known, these people have gotten a great deal of pushback from disgruntled internet goers. Looking on from the outside, it seems like they take this pushback in stride. They've built a momentum in their school of thought which is carried forward by their fans. Following in their wake, we small creators have taken to discussing more niche franchises in our own ways. However, since we are small, the difficulties of holding unpopular opinions can appear stronger to us. We may at times feel isolated or outnumbered. We may feel more vulnerable to emotional attacks. I would like to offer some encouragement for people like us, acknowledging the difficulties of sharing unpopular views and giving advice on how to respond to those difficulties. If you're feeling demoralized, I want to offer some hope. Due to the relative obscurity of your chosen franchise, or the lower view counts, or the unpopularity of your views, you may end up feeling incredibly alone. Odds are, you're probably not surrounded by nerds who hold the same convictions you do about your favorite franchise. Thus, you may find that the only other people willing to engage with your ideas are your detractors. Of course, there's nothing wrong with people disagreeing with you, it happens all the time. But when there's a large number of detractors, and little to no voices agreeing with you, the effect on your psyche can be burdensome. Even if you know what you're saying is absolutely correct, a flow of constant disagreement will gradually apply pressure on you. This can feel defeating, to say the least. As a side note, you actually see this phenomenon being exploited in communist struggle sessions, where one person is surrounded and verbally abused until they renounce all of their beliefs. The mob mentality of the online realm can resemble this at times, minus the direct threat of harm. Thus, it's important to keep your grounding. Remember that YouTube's like-dislike bar is only exactly what its name implies. It is a measure of the average viewer's subjective experience with your video. It is not a measure of how correct you are, or how valid your views are, or whether you deserve to speak. This much is obvious, but it can be overlooked when you're feeling demoralized, or, in some cases, when it's used as a point of attack. We creators are passionate about the media we critique. That's why we hold it to such high standards. However, there exist those who are equally passionate about our favorite franchises, yet hold vastly different viewpoints. This can cause some volatile reactions. On the one hand, you may receive valid criticism which helps you sharpen your views and create a more holistic, consistent set of standards. It's important to remain open to change, if necessary. On the other, more insidious hand, the criticism you receive may be fashioned to humiliate or provoke you. Yes, not all people criticize you for the purpose of your improvement. Your critic may attempt to saddle you with some great moral transgression or ulterior motives. They may create mountains of molehills and make molehills of mountains. They may do any number of things to create an unfavorable frame around your views or you as a person. In cases like these, if you wish to engage with them at all, you must attempt to salvage the constructive points from the criticisms while discarding the toxic substances and irrelevant parts. What helps with this is knowing your purpose. Some criticisms come with a pre-made assumption about what your goals and values should be. If their assumptions don't align with your own goals and values, the criticism is irrelevant to you. An easy rule of thumb is this: all constructive criticism is there to advise you in your future actions. If the criticism does not advise your future actions, that criticism is irrelevant to you. Remain aware that your critics are only human, and even if they're attempting to reveal your biases, may themselves be biased. If they frame you in a negative light, and you fail to separate the helpful from the non-helpful, you may end up falling into that frame and getting crushed by feelings of shame. This can be compounded if they've already established some credibility by offering legitimate criticisms. This is why the effort to separate must be made. And it is an effort. It may not be easy to pull the constructive value from someone's criticisms. You may have to translate their words into an approachable format before you can even begin to address them. For example, a detractor may say something like, "This guy doesn't even have the integrity to acknowledge the movie's fantastic script, despite acknowledging its sequel has a great script. This is a blatant double standard." This statement makes a lot of assumptions and some bold assertions, which are assumed to be true. Removing those, the sentence then becomes, "I believe this movie's script is fantastic." What started as an attempt at establishing hypocrisy turned out to be an expression of opinion, couched in confrontational language. Multiply the work of extracting value across many comments, or even response videos, and you'll be looking at a very large amount of work, for which the payoff may not be worth the drawbacks. Separating poison from non-poison day in and day out, it eventually just rubs off on you. If you're not careful, you may even start associating your favorite franchise with toxicity. When you cross that threshold where the value obtained isn't enough, then it's just not worth continuing. I want you to remember this. You do not owe your detractors rebuttals or explanations. You're a passionate YouTuber talking about his favorite fictional media, not a politician or something. Any response you give is just that, a gift. A gift to your audience and your critics, which can be revoked if it's not producing enough value. I know that when you're accused of something, or supposedly debunked, it can feel like the world stops turning until you give a proper reply, to set the record straight. But it's incredibly easy for people to continue piling on the responses. Cut off one head, two more take its place. If you ever wish to move on, you must realize that you likely will not have the last word, and you must be okay with that. After all of this, you still shouldn't forget the value of criticism and opposing viewpoints. They are that grindstone which sharpens you, and we would be nowhere as a species without them. That said, you can also over-engage with criticism. Over-sharpen a blade, and you take away more substance than it's worth. A lot of this advice I've been giving may seem obvious or trivial, but when you're in the thick of it, it's the last thing that crosses your mind. There's no instruction manual on how to operate a YouTube channel, so a lot of this is trial and error. I hope I've provided a ray of light, however small, to aid amidst the darkness.